hello, welcome. I hope you're doing well. So for this video, I'm about to throw myself a little bit under the bus. If you don't know, then my last video is a video about the 5 books that I really want to read before the end of the year. And doing that video got me thinking about all the books that are sitting on my shelves unread. And so I went through my shelves, finding all the books that I genuinely can't really believe that I haven't read yet, that I'm a little surprised at myself for not having gotten to yet, and that I feel like I definitely should have gotten to by now, but haven't. And so naturally, here I am to embarrass myself. There are, of course, so many books that I wish that I could have read by now, but these are the books that I own physical copies of, and I got them with the intention of reading them. And I just haven't yet, and they've just been sitting on my shelves for at least a year, and some of them have been sitting here for much longer. So that's what this video is. Let's just get to the books. So the first book I'm going to mention is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book I first heard about on BookTube. I picked it up a couple of years ago. It's one of my favorite booktubers' favorite books. It's, I think, urban fantasy, or it's at least magical realism. There's some sort of magic involved, and it's about a traveling circus and some sort of dueling or competition situation. It sounds really intriguing. It sounds really engaging. Apparently the writing is beautiful, and I don't reach for it, and I don't know why. This isn't even a particularly new book. This is at least like a decade old at this point. It was published in 2012, so way behind on this one, and I'm a little bit mad at myself because I have a feeling I'll enjoy it, and I keep not reaching for it. I was actually planning on reading this in October, but like I mentioned in a previous video, I was fighting a slump. I didn't read much at all in October, so that ended up not working out. I just heard really good things about this book and this author's other book. They sound really good. It's not that, and it's not even that I've tried to read it and it just wasn't the right mood. I've never reached for it. The blurbs around this are amazing too. I have no excuse. I have no explanation for why I haven't reached for this yet. I don't even think it's a mood thing. I keep forgetting that it's there. Maybe I should just leave it out on a desk or something so that I see it all the time. But I think I'm going to make this a 2024 book. A goal for 2024 to finally get to this, and probably some of the other books on this list as well. So yes, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I'm late to this one. The second book I'm going to mention is The Shadow of the Gods by Gwynne. I got this last year, so it hasn't been sitting on my shelf for far too long, but I remember really wanting this, and I just haven't been in the fantasy mood. I've heard so many amazing things about this book, this series, and I'm just so ready to dive into this in 2024. I know for a fact it's going to be one of the first books I pick up because I feel that fantasy mood creeping up on me. And I mean, it's a good thing that I have a bunch of unread fantasy on my shelf because it's going to be gobbled up pretty quick, I think, once the mood hits. I think the main reason why I was so intrigued and excited about this one is because it's apparently Norse inspired, which, as a Scandinavian, that's right up my alley. I love things that are Norse inspired. Apparently the writing is amazing and the characters are great, and I wish I just started reading it the moment I got it, but because of the not really being in a fantasy mood thing has been going on for so long, it's just been sitting here. Now that the other books are published as well, it's gonna be great because I can just go straight to the second one and then straight to the third one. I'm so excited about this one. This is probably the one on the list that I'm the most excited about just getting to, just because I know that I'm not going to have to wait that much longer. So yeah, heard great things, and just so ready for the fantasy world to drag me back into it. This is so high on the priority list for next year. You don't even know. The fact that this book is on this list is going to be dealt with so quick. So quick. Probably the soonest out of all the books on this list, I think. So yes, Shadow of the Gods. This next one is probably the one that I'm the most, embarrassed or ashamed about that I haven't read yet, especially because I have the physical copy. The Shadow of the Wind by Ruiz Zafon. This book, I don't even really know what this book is about. All I know is that it's a mix of things. It's historical, There's some mystery involved. It's a little fantastical. It even says at the very top, a classic literary thriller. I'm just genuinely shocked at myself. This is the one that just bothers me the most on this list, because I feel like for a reader like me, this is a must read. It sounds like it anyway. I don't know, I'm a little bit upset with myself that I haven't read this yet. It's a pretty chunky book too. Like it's got at least 500 pages. And this is a anniversary edition of the book, a 10th anniversary edition of the book. So I have a pretty version of the book too, like a really pretty version. And it's just been sitting on my shelf collecting dust, and I'm a little mad at myself about it. I don't really want to know more about this book than I already do. I want to go into it and be surprised. So I'm not going to reread the back, because I know when I picked it up in the store, I read the back. I've heard about it before. I got it thinking I'll get to this pretty soon. And it's been like 6 years. This has been on my shelves for a very long time. If you've read this book and you really enjoyed it, let me know. Don't tell me too much about it though, because like I said, I want to go into it not knowing very much. But I think if you guys help me build some excitement about this book, I'll get to it sooner. I really, really want to get to this one so soon, and it's just not been screaming at me the way the books in my previous video have. It has to be a 2024 read. It has to be. I can't not read it next year. I just can't. Like, this is a little bit unbelievable to me that I haven't gotten to this yet. It's so pretty too. This is such a pretty edition of the book. I can't believe that I haven't... Is it really bad? It's a little bad, isn't it? It's a little bad that I haven't gotten to this yet. This next one on my list is just basically the author in general, not just the physical book that I have, but the author in general. I'm a little surprised that I haven't gotten to yet. I don't really know how to pronounce her name, so I'm sorry if I really butcher it. But I'll try. Ruta Sepetys. This is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys, and she's written a few other novels as well, all of them historical fiction. And for those of you who like historical fiction, who have read historical fiction, probably have heard of her, if not also read some of her books like Salt to the Sea or I Must Betray You. She has a few more, I think. This is a story set in Spain, but she writes historical novels set all over the place. I think most of them span the second half of the 20th century, like World War II-ish. This one is set in the 50s, I believe. And then I Must Betray You, I think, is set in the 70s or 80s. But she might also have written books about earlier settings in time. I'm not entirely sure. She has written quite a few books at this point. Often when people talk about historical fiction, they bring up this author or one of her books. And this is the first book by her that I've gotten. This is the one that I was the most intrigued by at the time. I do have a couple other of her books on my TBR. Not physical TBR. They're not on my shelves. This is the only Ruta Sepetys book I have on my shelf. But I do want to get to a few of her other books as well. I'm just surprised that it's taken me this long. I haven't even read this one yet. I definitely have to read this one before I even think about getting any of her other books. I know that Salt to the Sea in particular was really, really big on BookTube when it came out. So that book is definitely on my want to read list at some point, but I'm gonna get to this one first. And then if I like it, Salt to the Sea will be the next one I read from her, I think. I am really excited about it though. I've heard really good things, not only about the author, but the book, about all of her books really, that people think that she handles the history really well in a really good way, which I think is important. Even if the characters are fictional, the backdrop isn't, and it needs to be treated with a certain respect and with a certain attention to detail. And people seem to be really happy with the way that she's done that in her books. People talk about her writing in such a positive way that it's a really pleasant writing style, that people really like her writing style. Her stories are also apparently really moving. So yeah, The Fountains of Silence definitely needs to be read. I need to get to Ruta Sepetys. I have to get to them so soon. I really, really do, because at least to me, this is a little inexcusable. Not as shocking as The Shadow of the Wind, but I mean, it's not far behind. Just Ruta Sepetys in general, I mean. Not necessarily this book, but Ruta Sepetys in general. So I think I'm just gonna have to make this list that I have for you guys today a mandatory 2024 reading situation, because I don't feel like I have an excuse not to get to this one. While The Shadow of the Wind was probably the most shocking book on this list for me. I feel like if any of these books are going to be a surprise to you guys watching, it's probably going to be this one, because it's Jade City by Fonda. I got this book years ago. I was in England. I went to a Waterstones, and I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I read the back and it sounded so cool and right up my alley. If you don't know, this is some sort of fantasy meets gangster story as far as I understand. And it's really, really popular among people who read fantasy. There's like a historical element to it as well. And I've said before, the combination of historical fiction and fantasy is the ultimate combination to me. I love that combination. Add into that some intrigue, some mystery, or some sort of high stakes. It sounds like it's made for me. And yet, here we are. It's even weirder because I've started this book twice and not gotten further than a couple of chapters. And it's not the writing, it's not the story. I was just never in the mood for it. And I feel like when the mood hit, this one kind of disappeared and I picked up other books over it for some reason. It just I kind of glazed over it every time. And at least now when I get to it, the entire series will be out. So that's something. But still, I'm a little bit shocked at myself about this one too, because if there was ever a book that sounded like it was made for me, it's this one. But I was not in the mood for it, so I put it down and just kind of forgot about it. So yeah, heard fantastic things, tried to get around to it, was never in the mood. This is another one that, like, if you guys have read it and you guys enjoyed it, hype it up in the comments, because, I mean, anything to push me into finally getting to this one, especially now that the fantasy kick is coming back. I need to get on it. This and the rest of the series. There are 3 books in this series, right? There's 3 of them. Like this one and 2 more. I really hope I end up really loving this. I feel like in 2024, if I get to this one at some point during the spring, and maybe the second one at some point in the summer, and then have the autumn to get to the last one, I feel like that could be a decent plan. Like, I'm kicking myself for not having read it yet, but I'm not also rushing to get to it. I seriously feel like I need a very special mood to pick this up and really, really enjoy it. And I'm just I'm gonna put this somewhere on my shelf so that I see it all the time, just so that the second that mood hits, I see it right away and I snatch it off the shelf so fast. I feel like that's a good plan. Yeah. That's my plan for this one, I think. The last book on this list is a weird one for me. It's a weird one. Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. I know I've said I don't reach much for YA anymore, and I don't, but there will always be some exceptions. There are some great stories within the YA genre. If you don't know what this is basically the 3rd and last installment in the Last Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare. It's historical fiction meets fantasy. Basically, it's set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, turn of the century London, and it's about these people who basically are a little bit different from humans, and they hunt shadow creatures. Basically. Cassandra Clare has written a lot of books in this world, a lot of them modern time, and some in a more historical setting. The first and original series is called The Mortal Instruments, and it's set in like 2010-ish. I tried it, didn't really work with me, but then I tried The Infernal Devices, which is set in the late 1800s London, same setting as this one, just a little bit earlier. And I loved it. I loved that story. I loved the characters. I loved everything about it. When she announced that she was writing this trilogy, which is basically about the children of the people we meet in The Infernal Devices, I was all over it. As soon as I could, I pre-ordered Chain of Gold, which is the first book in the series, and the day that it landed in my mailbox is the day I started reading it. I finished it really quickly, and I loved it. I loved it even more than I loved the Infernal Devices books. I felt like this was going to be my series. As soon as Chain of Iron, the second book, could be pre-ordered, I pre-ordered it, and when it was on its way, I reread Chain of Gold to be prepared to read Chain of Iron, which I started reading the day I got it. Again. And again, I loved the book, so I loved the first installment, and I loved the second one. A year and a half later, it was a little delayed, I think, this final book was finally up for pre-order, and I pre-ordered it again. But then, I don't really know what happened, because I wanted to reread the first 2 books before this one arrived, and I didn't. And then this one arrived, and I wanted to read it right away, and I didn't. And I can't explain it. I can't explain it because I loved the first two books and I am desperate to know how it all finishes. And now it's been, I don't know, a year or something. I don't even know if this is a 2023 release. Did it come out this year or last year? Okay, so it came out in like January 2023. So it came out this year, but still, like considering how eager I was, how much I loved the first two and how eager I was about this one, the fact that I haven't read it and I can't explain it. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with myself. I can't believe I haven't gotten to this yet. I pre-ordered it for... I waited for this to arrive in my mail. 2024 is the year. Maybe. I hope. I really, really hope, because I'm sitting here really itching to know how the story finishes, what happens to all these characters that I love so much, but apparently zero enthusiasm about actually getting around to it. It's so weird. So, Chain of Thorns. These are books that I like glance over that I don't even notice sit on my shelf, right? These are books that I had to stand there and go through every book on every shelf like, have I read you? Yes, I have. Have I read you? No. Why not? And that's when it sank in about these books like, wow, I haven't read this yet. Why? And I feel like, particularly some of them, it's bad. I feel like this was a little bit of a kick in the butt to me, and I feel like it's going to be a good one. I'm going to make sure that these are all in a very clear space on my bookshelf so that come 2024, I actually get around to them, because... of all the books on my shelves, these are the ones that I just cannot understand that I haven't read yet. I feel like I can remedy that. And they're not that many. There's 6 books, so it's not that many. Perfectly doable. I doubt my mood would let me, but I still feel like I have a good chance of getting around to these books next year. We'll see. I'm not going to set any hard TBR, but I have a good feeling about it. We'll see in a year if that actually works out for me, but anyway, for now, these are the 6 books I really, really cannot believe that I haven't read yet, and that definitely should be a priority next year. If you've read any of these books and you enjoyed them or you didn't, feel free to talk about them in the comments anyway. Again, I haven't read them, so I can't really talk to you about the books until I do. But if you have non-spoilery thoughts and opinions about them, feel free to share and we'll chat. And of course, if you have books that you can't believe you haven't read yet, that you feel like you really, really should have at this point and you just haven't for whatever reason, feel free to share those too. It might make me feel less bad about the fact that I have a pile of these books, because I really wish I didn't, but that's all for this little video. Mostly that I made for myself to finally get emotion, because like I said, this is kind of bad, but there's nothing like sitting down with these books and actually looking at them and holding them to finally kick me into motion. So hopefully this worked. I will report back at some point. Once I get to these books, you'll see them in wrap-ups and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's it from me. It's been lovely to have you here and talk books. I hope you have a really lovely weekend, and I hope that the book you're reading is a really, really good one. Bye!